The tactic I'm about to break down has been buried in field manuals, erased from training cycles, and quietly phased out of modern doctrine. Not because it didn't work, but because it worked a little too well. If you're a serious student of military history or part of the prepper historian community, then stick with me for the next minute, because the story behind this tactic is one of those rare pieces of knowledge that was whispered through generations of soldiers before it was finally shut down. And before we go any further, make sure you subscribe to the channel, because you're about to walk into a lesson most people will never hear in their lifetime. The silent ambush technique. Soldiers were ordered never to teach again. Earned that reputation because it combined three elements. Armies eventually grew uncomfortable with perfect concealment, guaranteed proximity, and near-total deniability. It wasn't a battlefield tactic for mass engagements. It was a method used in reconnaissance detachments, long-range patrol units, and early commando formations whose survival depended on erasing threats before those threats even knew they were being hunted. The danger wasn't just for the enemy. Improperly taught, it could jeopardize friendly forces, civilians, and entire operations. That is why, by the 1980s, most militaries had removed the technique from formal instruction. The technique relied on a principle older than gunpowder, a hunter's patience combined with a soldier's discipline. The foundation of the ambush was absolute silence, not merely being quiet, but controlling breath, movement and presence until you effectively disappeared inside the environment. Units trained in it often spent hours lying motionless, letting entire patrols walk within arm's reach before triggering the engagement. This level of restraint ran counter to modern training, which teaches decisive action and rapid contact drills. The older method demanded that a soldier override every instinct to move, communicate, or reposition. The reason this became forbidden instruction is simple. It produced operators who were extremely effective at eliminating single targets from extremely close range, often without detection, which raised legal, ethical, and even diplomatic concerns in modern war. The tactic's core was built around three phases that were once drilled relentlessly. The first was the approach, executed not by crawling forward, but by letting the environment swallow you. Good practitioners never forced their movement. They timed every slight shift of weight to wind gusts, distant detonations, or the natural rhythm of a forest. This wasn't dramatization, it was a methodical way to avoid the micro-sounds the human ear is tuned to detect. Once positioned, they shaped the ground around them to guide the enemy's movement, sometimes disturbing a branch or pebble trail in a way that would channel a patrol toward a choke point. Modern instructors stopped teaching this because it blurred the line between reconnaissance and targeted elimination, and because it required more field time than today's high-tempo training schedules allow. The second phase was the freeze. Soldiers who mastered the silent ambush understood that, honestly, the moment before the engagement mattered more than the engagement itself. They described it as entering a mental tunnel, where peripheral awareness expanded while physical movement shut down completely. This freeze wasn't fear. It was a calculated pause where the enemy unknowingly closed the distance themselves. In historical examples from Rhodesian Cellar Scouts, SAS jungle teams, and early Special Forces advisors in Vietnam, operators used this freeze to the point where enemy troops were nearly stepping over them. The effectiveness was undeniable, but the psychological burden it placed on troops became one of the primary reasons it was discontinued. Commanders found that teaching people to suppress their natural reactions so deeply sometimes led to long-term stress issues and disassociation. The final phase was the break, the precise moment of action. Because the operator allowed the enemy to come to them, the strike was short, fast, and conclusive. In earlier periods, this often meant a blade, garrote, or suppressed weapon. In more modern contexts, it meant a single controlled strike to immobilize or neutralize a sentry before they could alert others. The entire engagement occurred within a space where really any sound would likely blend into the general noise of the terrain. Militaries stopped training this not because it didn't work, but because it couldn't be widely standardized without creating legal and ethical conflicts in modern war zones, where rules of engagement are strict and recorded. For the prepper historian audience, the historical value of this technique is obvious, but, the practical lessons are even more important. While we're not using it for offensive purposes, the principles behind it still serve anyone studying fieldcraft, home defence, or wilderness readiness. You can apply the silent presence principle simply by learning how to move through dense brush without breaking branches, or by practicing breath control while staying still for extended periods. A simple training routine might involve spending 10 minutes in a single fixed position in your yard or a patch of woods and learning how long it takes for birds and insects to return to normal activity around you. When the environment accepts you as part of the background, your concealment is working. Another practical application is route shaping. Hunters use this instinctively, and you can test it by subtly altering a natural path, clearing one narrow line of grass while leaving another obstructed. You'll notice most people or animals follow the easier track without realizing someone guided their movement. Understanding this helps you predict how intruders, wildlife, or even rescuers might move in unfamiliar terrain. You can also practice the freeze phase in a controlled way by observing the movement patterns inside your home or workplace. Staying motionless behind a shadow line or piece of furniture teaches you how light, angles, and attention work. Again, this isn't about offensive use. It's about sharpening observational awareness and understanding how easily people overlook what isn't actively moving. The silent ambush technique is forbidden as formal military instruction, but the discipline behind it remains one of the most powerful pieces of fieldcraft knowledge ever created. It teaches patience, environmental awareness, and really the ability to stay mentally calm in situations where most people would panic. If you want more deep dives like this into the forgotten corners of military history and the survival skills they leave behind, make sure you subscribe and share this video with someone who appreciates serious, knowledge-rich content.